HOA Karen pepper sprayed my disabled son, then got exactly what she deserved. Hey there, amazing viewers. Glowing star, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Globe showing Europe, Africa sparkles. If this shocking tale had you on the edge of your seat, just wait until tomorrow's story. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Police car like fire, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're the first to hear what happens next. Clapperboard bell, and don't forget to smash that like button to help more people discover these unbelievable stories. See you in the comments. Moving into a new home was supposed to be the beginning of a brighter future for our family. My wife, Amanda, and I had spent months searching for the perfect place, a house that would not only feel like home but also provide the accessibility our son, Lucas, desperately needed. At just 10 years old, Lucas had already faced more challenges than most kids his age. 4 years ago, a distracted driver ran a stop sign, changing our lives forever. Lucas had been riding his bike with his friends, laughing and racing down the street, when the accident happened. The impact left him with severe spinal injuries, and after countless surgeries and physical therapy sessions, doctors confirmed that he would never walk again. Despite everything, Lucas never lost his spirit. He was strong, determined, and full of life. "It's just my legs," he had told me once with a brave smile. "I can still do everything else." His optimism inspired us every single day. But as much as he adapted to his new reality, our old home was no longer a place where he could truly thrive. The narrow hallways, steep front steps, and cramped doorways turned even simple tasks into daily struggles. Watching him try to navigate our house in his wheelchair, hitting walls, getting stuck, and needing our help for almost everything, it broke our hearts. We knew he deserved better. So, we made the decision to move. It wasn't easy uprooting our lives, but it was necessary. We needed a home where Lucas could move freely and regain some of his independence. We found a beautiful house in what seemed like a quiet, welcoming neighborhood. The house itself wasn't perfect, but with a few renovations, a widened front path, a sturdy ramp, and some interior adjustments, it could become the safe, accessible space Lucas needed. More than that, it could be a place where he felt at home. Excited for the future, we wasted no time getting started. While Lucas stayed with Amanda's parents to avoid the chaos of moving and construction, we began packing up our old life. Saying goodbye to our previous home was bittersweet. It held so many memories, birthday parties, movie nights, and bedtime stories, but it also carried the weight of struggle. As we closed the door for the last time, we reminded ourselves that this move was for something greater. Moving day arrived in a whirlwind of boxes, moving trucks, and excited anticipation. As we pulled up to our new home, I took a deep breath. This was it, the fresh start we had worked so hard for. With every piece of furniture moved inside, every box unpacked, I imagined the life we were building for Lucas. Soon, he would be here, wheeling himself up the new ramp, exploring his space, and feeling like he truly belonged. At that moment, we believed we had found the perfect home. What we didn't know was that our biggest challenge was yet to come, one that had nothing to do with ramps, renovations, or accessibility. It came in the form of a neighbor named Karen. The moment we stepped into our new home, we felt a wave of relief. The house wasn't perfect yet, but we could already picture Lucas rolling through the widened hallways, racing to the kitchen, and finally having the freedom he deserved. My wife, Amanda, and I stood in the driveway, watching the moving truck unload box after box, exhausted but hopeful. Then, we heard it. "Welcome to the neighborhood." We turned to see a woman standing on the sidewalk, holding a tray of cookies. At first glance, she seemed friendly, her smile wide, her posture confident. But something about the way she looked at us, scanning our every move like an inspector, made my stomach tighten. My instincts told me this wasn't just a casual neighborly visit. She introduced herself as Karen, the president of the HOA. The moment she mentioned the HOA, I felt a slight twinge of concern. I had heard plenty of horror stories about overbearing HOA presidents, but I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just being thorough. Maybe she really was here to welcome us. That hope disappeared the moment we mentioned the renovations. "Oh, you're making changes already?" Karen asked, her smile twitching. Her eyes flickered toward the front of the house, where contractors were set to begin work on a ramp and a widened path for Lucas. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Our son uses a wheelchair, so we need to make the house more accessible for him." Karen's smile froze. "Are those changes really necessary?" she asked, her tone overly sweet but laced with something sharper. "This community has a certain aesthetic. We like to keep things uniform. I hope you'll submit the proper paperwork for HOA approval before doing anything drastic." Her words hit me like a slap. She wasn't just asking about regulations. She was making it clear that she didn't approve of our modifications. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay composed. "We already got the necessary permits," I said firmly. "Everything we're doing is legal, and it's all for our son's safety." Karen nodded, but the tightness in her jaw told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't the last conversation we'd be having about this. Sure enough, the next morning, as the contractors arrived to begin work, I spotted Karen across the street, arms crossed, watching like a hawk. She paced up and down the sidewalk, making sure we saw her. It wasn't curiosity, it was intimidation. Then she started interfering. First, she parked her car just close enough to our driveway to make it difficult for the workers to unload supplies. When I confronted her, she put on an innocent act. "Oh dear, was my car in the way?" she asked, feigning surprise. "I'll move it next time." But the next day, she did it again. Then, I caught her standing on the sidewalk, snapping photos of our renovations with her phone. When I approached her, my patience already wearing thin, she didn't even try to hide it. "Just documenting," she said with a smug smile. "You know, to make sure everything is up to code." It was becoming clear that Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was determined to make our lives miserable. And something told me she wasn't done yet. At first, I thought Karen's interference was just about the renovations. Maybe she was one of those HOA presidents who obsessed over rules and regulations. Maybe, despite her passive-aggressive behavior, she just didn't like change. But I was wrong. This wasn't about the ramp or the widened walkway. This was about Lucas. It became clear the first time Karen laid eyes on him. It was moving day, and after weeks of preparation, Lucas was finally coming home. My wife, Amanda, and I stood in the driveway, waiting as my in-laws' car pulled up. Lucas was buzzing with excitement. He had been away while we set everything up, and now, he was finally getting to see his new home. I saw Karen the moment Lucas wheeled himself onto the driveway. She was standing on her porch across the street, watching. At first, I thought maybe she was just being nosy as usual. But then she stepped off her porch and started walking toward us. "Oh, so this is your son," she said as she reached the edge of our driveway. Her eyes flicked down to his wheelchair. Lucas, ever the polite kid, extended his hand. "Hi, I'm Lucas," he said, his voice bright and full of warmth. Karen hesitated. And then, she recoiled. She actually took a step back, clutching her purse like Lucas had just coughed on her. Oh no, sweetie, she said, forcing out a laugh. I don't want to catch anything. I felt my blood turn to ice. Lucas slowly pulled his hand back, confusion flickering across his face. Amanda went rigid beside me, her hands balling into fists. For a moment, no one spoke. Then I stepped forward, my voice dangerously calm. Karen, that is completely unacceptable. Karen waved a dismissive hand. Oh, don't be so sensitive, she said, rolling her eyes. I'm just being cautious. Germs, you know. You can't be too careful these days. My hands clenched at my sides. My son, my 10-year-old son, had just been treated like he was some kind of disease. Lucas didn't say a word. He just sat there in his wheelchair, gripping the armrests, his smile completely gone. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. Karen didn't just dislike us, she despised us. Or, more specifically, she despised Lucas. She confirmed it later that evening. Amanda and I were sitting on the porch, finally relaxing after a long, exhausting day, when we heard Karen's voice drifting from her yard. She wasn't speaking to us, but she made sure we could hear her. I just don't understand why they moved here, she said to another neighbor. This neighborhood wasn't designed for people like that. People like that. Amanda inhaled sharply beside me, her fingers tightening around her coffee mug. Karen continued, her voice thick with condescension. I mean, really, what were they thinking? This is a place for real families, not charity cases. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the porch. I had heard enough. If you have something to say, Karen, I called out, my voice carrying across the yard, say it to me directly. Karen froze mid-sentence. Slowly, she turned, her face caught between surprise and irritation. Oh, she said with a too bright smile. I wasn't talking about you. I stepped closer to the fence. Sure you weren't. My voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the edge in it. But just so we're clear, my family belongs here just as much as anyone else. If you have a problem with that, it's your problem. Karen's fake smile vanished. She glared at me for a long moment before spinning on her heel and marching back inside, slamming her door behind her. I let out a slow breath, my hand still shaking with adrenaline. Amanda stood beside me, her expression a mix of disbelief and exhaustion. This isn't over, she said softly. She was right. Karen had made her feelings clear. And something told me she wasn't done making our lives miserable. After that night, Karen's hostility only escalated. It wasn't just passive-aggressive comments anymore, it was open warfare. She started filing complaints with the HOA about unauthorized modifications to our home, despite the fact that we had all the necessary permits. She even called the city inspector, hoping to find some violation that would force us to undo the changes. But nothing worked. So, she got bolder. She began walking past our house more often, sometimes stopping on the sidewalk just to glare at us. She made snide remarks within earshot, muttering about how people like us ruin neighborhoods. It became clear she wasn't just annoyed, we were an offense to her idea of what this community should be. And worst of all, she made sure Lucas felt it. One afternoon, as Lucas was rolling down the driveway to get the mail, Karen was standing across the street, arms folded. As he reached the mailbox, she let out a loud, exaggerated sigh. It's such a shame, she said, shaking her head. Not everyone wants to be reminded of things like that every day. Lucas stiffened. He didn't look at her, but I saw the way his fingers tightened around the wheels of his chair. He had heard every word. That was it. I stormed out the front door, ready to finally put an end to this. Karen, I called, my voice sharp. She turned, smiling like she had done nothing wrong. Oh, I didn't see you there. You don't have to see me, I snapped. But you will respect my son. If I catch you making another comment like that, we're going to have a real problem. Karen just scoffed. Oh, calm down. No need to get dramatic. I wanted to yell. I wanted to scream at her for every cruel word, every nasty look, every way she had made Lucas feel unwelcome. But I knew people like Karen. She wanted a reaction. She wanted us to lose our tempers so she could play the victim. So instead, I took a deep breath, clenched my jaw, and walked away. That was my mistake. I thought ignoring her would be enough. But the next day, she proved just how far she was willing to go. Lucas was outside, enjoying the fresh air, when Karen stormed across the street, her eyes blazing with something I hadn't seen before, pure hatred. I have had it with you people, she spat, stopping right in front of him. I was halfway out the door when she reached into her purse. And then, before I could process what was happening, she pulled out a can of pepper spray. No! I shouted, running toward them. But I wasn't fast enough. Karen pressed the nozzle and sprayed directly into Lucas's face. The scream that came out of him was something I'll never forget. A high-pitched, agonized cry as his hands flew to his burning eyes, his body shaking with pain. Amanda bolted out of the house, panic-stricken. What is wrong with you? She screamed, rushing to Lucas's side. Karen took a step back, completely unfazed. I was defending myself, she said coldly, as if my 10-year-old son in a wheelchair had somehow been a threat to her. My blood ran cold. I turned to her, my fists clenched, my body shaking with rage. You're going to pay for this, I growled. Before she could respond, a neighbor sprinted over, carrying a gallon of milk. This will help, they said, breathless. Without hesitation, they poured it over Lucas's face, trying to ease the burning. Someone must have called the police because, within minutes, sirens filled the air. 2 officers stepped out of their patrol car, their eyes darting between Karen, Lucas, and the rest of us. Karen crossed her arms, completely unapologetic. I was defending myself, she repeated. The officer closest to her didn't even blink. He just turned to Lucas, who was still crying in Amanda's arms, and then back at Karen. We're going to need to see some footage, he said. The neighbor who had helped with the milk stepped forward. I have security cameras, they said. They caught everything. Karen's smug expression finally faltered. For the first time, I saw something other than arrogance in her eyes. Panic. And she had every reason to be afraid. The moment Karen realized there was video evidence, the confidence drained from her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but for once, she had nothing to say. The officers didn't hesitate. Ma'am, one of them said, stepping toward her, you're under arrest for assault. Karen's eyes widened in shock. What? She shrieked, taking a step back. You can't be serious. I was defending myself. The officer didn't flinch. Turn around, please. Karen sputtered in protest, but she wasn't getting out of this one. The moment they placed the handcuffs around her wrists, she finally seemed to understand. This was real. This time, her entitlement wouldn't save her. As they led her toward the police car, she whipped her head around, glaring at me and Amanda. "This is a mistake," she shouted. "I'm the victim here. You people are ruining this neighborhood." Her voice faded as the squad car door slammed shut. But the damage had already been done. Lucas was still shaking, his small body curled into Amanda's arms. His face was red and swollen from the pepper spray, and though the milk had helped, he was still in pain. I knelt beside him, my heart breaking at the sight of his tear-streaked face. "She's gone, buddy," I whispered, smoothing back his hair. "She won't hurt you again." A neighbor placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "We'll testify," they said firmly. "Whatever you need, we've got your back." That night, as we sat in the emergency room waiting for the doctors to check Lucas's eyes, Amanda and I made a decision. We weren't going to let this slide. We were pressing charges. Underscore 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 underscore. The trial moved fast. With the security footage, multiple eyewitnesses, and Karen's complete lack of remorse, the case against her was airtight. She had no defense. But that didn't stop her from trying. During the trial, Karen sat at the defense table with her arms crossed, radiating resentment. Her lawyer attempted to spin the story, claiming she had acted in self-defense, that she had felt threatened. The jury wasn't buying it, especially after they watched the footage. The courtroom was silent as the video played. Every cruel word, every act of aggression, and finally, the moment she pulled out the pepper spray and attacked my son. When the clip ended, I glanced at Karen. Her jaw was clenched. Her face was red. But she still wouldn't look at us. The verdict was swift. Guilty. Amanda let out a soft gasp, covering her mouth with her hands. I squeezed her hand tightly, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. The judge didn't hold back in sentencing. Karen received 7 years in prison with no possibility of parole. She was also ordered to pay $50,000 in damages to cover Lucas's medical expenses and emotional distress. But the best part? The judge personally assigned her 200 hours of community service, specifically, working with disability advocacy programs. This court hopes, the judge said, their voice firm, that you will finally learn compassion for those you have treated so cruelly. Karen's face was priceless. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but for once in her life, she had nothing to say. The gavel slammed down. Case closed. Underscore 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 underscore. In the weeks after the trial, something incredible happened. Our neighbors, the same ones who had once ignored Karen's behavior, started showing up. They brought gifts for Lucas. They left notes on our doorstep. They apologized for not stepping in sooner. And one afternoon, a new family moved into Karen's house. A couple with 2 young kids. The first thing they did? They walked over to our porch, knocked on our door, and said, "Hi. We're so happy to be your neighbors." Lucas beamed. For the first time in months, we could finally breathe. Karen had tried to tear us down. But in the end, she lost everything. And we won. What do you think about this shocking story? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever dealt with a neighbor like Karen? How would you have reacted if this happened to your family? Share your opinions in the comments below. Backhand index pointing down. It's heartbreaking to see how some people can be so cruel, but this story also shows the power of justice and community support. Lucas and his family went through so much, yet they stood strong and fought back. Flexed biceps, what part of this story impacted you the most? Was it the moment Karen got arrested? The courtroom verdict? Or the way the community finally came together? And if you're watching from somewhere around the world, let us know where you're tuning in from. Globe showing Europe, Africa, we love seeing how far our stories reach. Make sure to hit that like button if you believe justice was served and subscribe so you don't miss our next incredible story. Police car light, trust me, tomorrow's episode is one you won't want to miss. Fire, see you in the comments. Speech balloon.